life often presents moments we never see coming, moments that shake the very foundation of who we are. For me, that moment arrived in the form of betrayal, sharp and sudden, cutting deeper than any wound I had known. It wasn't a stranger who caused it. It was someone I had trusted, someone whose smile I believed was genuine, someone whose words I held close to my heart. I had shared dreams, secrets, and vulnerabilities, thinking that in the tapestry of life, loyalty would bind us together. But loyalty, as I learned, is a fragile thread, and when it snaps, the fall is devastating. It began with subtle hints, little signs that something was amiss, but I ignored them. After all, who wants to see the cracks in a foundation they've built their life upon? Then came the confrontation, a day that feels like it is etched permanently into my memory. I discovered that my confidant had not only betrayed my trust, but had done so in the most public and humiliating way possible. My ideas were stolen, my reputation questioned, and the whispers around me made every step feel like walking on shards of glass. The laughter of strangers and the knowing glances of friends amplified my shame, creating a pressure so intense it seemed unbearable. In those first moments, rage surged, mingled with heartbreak. I felt powerless, yet paradoxically, I also sensed a spark that whispered, "This cannot be the end." Tears flowed freely, not just from sadness but from the shock of realization life, as I had trusted it, had shifted beneath my feet. I saw the world differently that day. People I had considered allies were now shadows of their true selves, revealing that betrayal often comes from the closest quarters. And yet, as painful as it was, the humiliation carried a strange clarity. It forced me to confront who I was and who I wanted to become. It's easy to wallow in betrayal, to let anger consume you until it defines every action, every thought. Many do. But I realized that if I let this moment break me, it would serve the betrayer's purpose better than any revenge could. The sting of humiliation became a mirror, reflecting not weakness but potential, the chance to rise stronger and more formidable. I began to notice small details, the patterns of deceit, the weaknesses of those who wronged me, and most importantly, my own capacity to endure. During this period, I found myself analyzing every choice I had made, every moment I had trusted too blindly. This wasn't just self-recrimination. It was preparation. Pain, I understood, can be a teacher if we are willing to learn. The betrayal had laid bare the raw truth. Life doesn't guarantee fairness, but it does reward perseverance and intelligence. And so, the first step in my journey from tears to triumph was acceptance, not of the injustice itself, but of the fact that my response could define my story. In these moments of despair, I discovered a hidden strength. Each night of restless sleep, each pang of humiliation, and each tear shed became a brick in the foundation of a new self, a self that would not only survive but thrive. I made a silent promise the world would see not the broken, humiliated person but the one who emerged from the ashes unstoppable and unshaken. This moment of betrayal, as dark as it felt, was the spark for everything that followed. It was the beginning of a journey that would transform pain into power, tears into strategy, and heartbreak into the clarity needed for eventual triumph. The moment of betrayal leaves a mark, but it is what comes after that defines the true measure of a person. Once the initial shock subsided, I realized that raw emotion alone could not bring the justice or satisfaction I sought. Anger is fleeting, and impulsive actions often lead to regret. I needed a plan, a careful, deliberate strategy that would allow me to transform my pain into strength and my humiliation into triumph. The path forward required patience, observation, and relentless perseverance. Every great story of revenge begins not with immediate retaliation, but with the calm, calculated preparation that turns weakness into power. The first step was understanding. I studied every detail of the betrayal, how it happened, who was involved, and what vulnerabilities were exposed. I analyzed the people who had wronged me, not with hatred, but with precision. What were their habits, their weaknesses, the gaps in their confidence? I realized that knowledge was my most powerful weapon. The more I observed, the more I saw patterns of arrogance, overconfidence, and carelessness. These patterns became the blueprint for my eventual turnaround. At the same time, I turned inward, examining my own skills, resources, and opportunities. I recognized areas where I had been naive, where my trust had been exploited, and where I needed to grow. Preparation was not just about plotting against others, it was about fortifying myself to ensure that when the moment came, I would stand unshakable. I embraced learning as part of my plan. Each day became a chance to acquire new skills, knowledge, and strategies. I read extensively, sought mentors, and practiced relentlessly. I strengthened my mind and body, understanding that resilience is cultivated, not inherited. Every setback along the way became an opportunity to refine my approach. If I faltered, I noted the mistake, adjusted, and moved forward with renewed focus. This phase was grueling, often exhausting, yet I found a strange satisfaction in the slow accumulation of power and insight. Unlike impulsive acts of revenge, which often crumble under their own weight, deliberate preparation builds a foundation that can withstand the storms of uncertainty. Patience became my ally. Waiting is perhaps the hardest part of any journey, especially when emotions burn bright. There were days when anger threatened to consume me, when the desire for immediate retaliation screamed louder than reason, but I reminded myself that speed is not always strength. True power lies in timing, the ability to strike not in haste, but when conditions are optimal and when the impact of every action is maximized. I learned to watch silently, to remain composed in the face of provocation, and to let the world underestimate me. The quieter my demeanor, the sharper my advantage grew. People often misjudge those who appear passive or defeated, not realizing that a storm can gather silently before it strikes. As my skills, knowledge, and patience grew, so did my confidence. I became methodical in my actions, crafting small, calculated moves that tested the waters and revealed further opportunities. I was careful not to reveal my intentions, masking my determination behind composure and polite interactions. Every encounter became a lesson in strategy, teaching me how to navigate challenges, manipulate circumstances, and turn the strengths of others to my advantage. It was not about cruelty, it was about precision. I wanted a revenge that was undeniable not only in its effect, but in the clarity with which it demonstrated my growth and resilience. Perseverance was tested constantly. Obstacles arose that threatened to derail my plan, betrayals from others, misunderstandings, and moments of self-doubt. But each challenge reinforced my resolve. I understood that success is rarely instantaneous. It is the result of consistent effort over time, the willingness to endure discomfort, and the refusal to surrender to despair. In embracing perseverance, I discovered a deeper strength, an unwavering faith in my ability to shape my destiny despite the cruelty of circumstances. By the time the moment arrived to act, I was no longer the person who had been humiliated. I had evolved, strengthened by preparation and tested by perseverance. What once was raw pain had transformed into strategic insight, and the person who had tried to break me found themselves facing someone who had mastered patience, planning, and persistence. Every step, every day of preparation, every quiet moment of observation had led to a moment of undeniable power. The careful cultivation of knowledge, skills, and resilience had turned a desire for revenge into a vehicle for triumph, proving that true strength is born not from anger, but from deliberate, persistent action. The moment of preparation and perseverance leads inevitably to action, the point at which all patience, learning, and strategic planning converge into a single, decisive moment. Turning the tables is not about reckless confrontation or impulsive vengeance. It is about asserting control over a situation that once controlled you. It is the act of reclaiming power, dignity, and respect in a way that is undeniable and transformative. After months of careful observation, skill, building, and subtle maneuvering, the moment came when I could finally step forward with confidence and precision. I began by identifying the perfect opportunity, a situation where the actions of those who had wronged me would naturally expose their vulnerabilities. Timing was crucial. To strike too early would risk failure, while waiting too long could allow circumstances to shift against me. The moment had to be flawless, calculated, and unassailable. I remember the hours I spent envisioning scenarios, rehearsing responses, and anticipating every possible reaction. Each choice was weighed, each step deliberate, because true revenge is as much about restraint and calculation as it is about action. When the opportunity arrived, I acted with clarity and purpose. I didn't rely on force or intimidation. I relied on the advantage I had painstakingly cultivated. The people who had doubted me, who had laughed at my humiliation, now faced a version of me they had never imagined, someone who was composed, confident, and far more capable than they had allowed themselves to see. Every move I made was strategic, demonstrating both intelligence and moral clarity. I refused to stoop to petty retaliation. Instead, I ensured that my actions were visible proof of the power that comes from preparation and self-mastery. Part of turning the tables was reclaiming my narrative. For so long, I had been defined by the betrayal I endured, reduced in the eyes of others to a victim of circumstance. But in that moment, I took control. I revealed truths and exposed realities that had been hidden, not with malice, but with an undeniable logic that left no room for doubt. The very people who had sought to diminish me were confronted with the consequences of their actions, their own arrogance and misjudgments now laid bare. It was a reversal so complete that it seemed almost poetic, the oppressed becoming the one who commands attention and respect. There was an element of artistry in the execution. Revenge is not merely the act of harming someone else. It is the careful orchestration of events so that justice, as you see it, is served naturally. I ensured that every move was proportionate and precise, avoiding unnecessary cruelty, but making sure that the lesson was unmistakable. People often forget that true triumph is measured not by the suffering of others, but by the dignity, strength, and wisdom you carry into the aftermath. By acting with intention rather than impulse, I transformed what could have been bitterness into a statement of personal power. During this phase, I felt a mixture of adrenaline, satisfaction, and an almost surreal calm. The months of planning and endurance had culminated in a moment of clarity where everything aligned perfectly. Every step I had taken, every skill I had owned, every ounce of patience I had cultivated now bore fruit. Those who had sought to belittle me were now witnesses to my transformation, not through boastful words, but through undeniable actions. The humiliation I had endured was eclipsed by the respect, awe, and recognition I now commanded. This turning of the tables also taught me the value of self-respect. Revenge is hollow if it reduces you to the same level as those who wronged you. Instead, by acting deliberately and strategically, I elevated myself above the pettiness and arrogance that had caused my suffering. Triumph came not only in the outcome but in the process itself, the realization that through discipline, intelligence, and perseverance, I had become a force that could not be ignored or undermined. The person who had been humiliated and betrayed was no more. In their place stood someone who had harnessed every tear, every setback, and every doubt into a demonstration of resilience and power. In the end, turning the tables was not simply about winning, it was about transformation. It was about showing that the trials we endure can be tools for growth, that pain can be converted into strategy, and that perseverance can lead to moments of undeniable strength. By the time the dust settled, the story had changed, not just in the eyes of others, but in my own perception of who I was. From that moment, I understood that triumph is rarely a matter of brute force. It is the careful, calculated reclaiming of control, the silent yet powerful statement that those who seek to diminish you underestimated the strength that lies within. The journey of revenge, when executed with patience, strategy, and precision, does not end at the moment of triumph. True victory is measured not only by the reversal of circumstances, but by the transformation it sparks within oneself. After the tables were turned and those who had sought to humiliate me faced the consequences of their actions, I realized that the most profound change had occurred inside me. I was no longer the person defined by betrayal, fear, or humiliation. I had grown into someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient, a version of myself shaped by every tear, every challenge, and every moment of perseverance. Redemption in this context was not about forgiving those who had wronged me. It was about reclaiming my sense of self and asserting my dignity. I understood that holding on to anger or bitterness indefinitely would only weigh me down, preventing me from truly moving forward. The act of taking control and executing my plan had freed me in a way that no external validation could. I learned that revenge, when guided by clarity and purpose, has the power to catalyze personal growth. Each calculated step, each patient maneuver, and every moment of endurance had contributed to my transformation, teaching me that challenges are not simply obstacles. They are opportunities to forge character and strength. In the aftermath, I began to see the world through a new lens. Situations that once seemed overwhelming now appeared as tests of resilience and intelligence. I realized that pain and adversity are inevitable, but suffering is optional. What determines our trajectory is not the actions of others, but how we respond. By turning the tables, I had proven to myself that I could face betrayal, humiliation, and doubt without losing my sense of purpose. This clarity became the foundation of my growth, allowing me to approach life with confidence, patience, and a deeper understanding of human nature. The experience also reshaped my relationships. I became more discerning about whom I trusted, learning to balance openness with wisdom. I discovered the importance of surrounding myself with people who uplifted and challenged me, rather than those who exploited or diminished my potential. While the betrayal had been painful, it taught me lessons about loyalty, empathy, and the value of authentic connections. These lessons became integral to my personal evolution, guiding my interactions and decisions in ways that extended far beyond the immediate sphere of revenge. Beyond personal insight, the journey fostered resilience. I realized that adversity is a crucible, refining not only skill and strategy, but also the very essence of character. Each obstacle I had faced, each period of uncertainty, and each moment of doubt had strengthened my resolve. I could withstand challenges that once would have broken me, and I approached life with a sense of agency that was previously absent. The transformation was subtle, but profound, from vulnerability to empowerment, from despair to determination, from reactive impulses to strategic action. Another critical aspect of growth was understanding the true meaning of power. Power is often mistaken for domination or control over others, but I came to see it as mastery over oneself. The ability to remain composed in the face of provocation, to act with intention rather than impulsiveness, and to convert setbacks into opportunities became my greatest source of strength. I had learned that real influence comes not from fear or intimidation, but from demonstrating capability, resilience, and integrity. This insight became the cornerstone of my personal and professional life moving forward, shaping how I approached challenges, relationships, and goals. Finally, the journey left me with a profound sense of purpose. I realized that the tears I shed, the nights of doubt, and the months of careful preparation were not wasted. They had been the forge in which my character was strengthened. My experience became a story I could share, a testament to the power of perseverance, strategy, and personal growth. I had moved from being a passive victim of circumstance to an active architect of my destiny, demonstrating that triumph is not merely the defeat of others, but the elevation of oneself. In this way, revenge became more than an act of justice. It became a catalyst for self-realization and empowerment, proving that the most lasting victories are those that transform the person achieving them. The journey from betrayal to triumph, from humiliation to empowerment, had reshaped my identity. I emerged stronger, wiser, and equipped with a clarity of purpose that could not be shaken by external forces. What began as a desire for revenge became an avenue for redemption, growth, and the assertion of a self that was no longer defined by the actions of others. Through strategy, perseverance, and reflection, I had turned tears into triumph, creating a story not just of retaliation, but of transformation. A story that inspires, educates, and reminds us all that the greatest victories are those that shape who we are and who we become.